Welcome to episode 262 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing Vladimir de Fontenay, who just did an indie drama called Mobile Homes. It's a great example of a feature film that started out as a short film, and then the writer-director was able to take that short film out as a proof of concept and ultimately get funding and get his feature film version produced. So stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 262. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So a quick few words about what I'm working on. My feature film, The Pinch, the crime thriller feature that I've been working on over the last couple of years, we've now officially launched on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon, which includes Amazon Prime. We're launching on Vudu this week, so if you use that service, we should be available there as well. If you subscribe to Amazon Prime, you can watch the film for free. Again, you just go to Amazon Prime, type in The Pinch. If you watch it and have a minute, please do leave a review of the film. It's especially important with Amazon Prime because this is where most of the money is going to be made for a low budget film like this. And getting good reviews and lots of early watches will help the film get recommended to other people who use Amazon Prime. So, a big thanks to everyone who has gone on and written a nice review for me. It really, really is appreciated. And if you do have a minute to watch the film and give me a review in the future, those are also very much appreciated. Also, I'm selling the film directly from my website. I've mentioned this before. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/thepinch. You can buy it there. It's basically the same price. It's a little less than $5. You can also get the 3-hour webinar if you would like. If you go through my site for an additional, I think the upsell is like $5 to add that on to the purchase of the actual film. And in that 3-hour webinar, I cover every part of the process of making the film, writing the screenplay, raising the money, pre-production, production, post-production. I put quite a bit of time into preparing this webinar, getting it ready. So if you're thinking about making a micro budget film, I think this would be very educational for you. In terms of my own writing, I've got a solid draft of my horror thriller screenplay that I'm hoping to shoot this year. I've sent it to a line producer friend of mine for the first sort of preliminary set of notes. Me and the other producer will be meeting him next week to talk it over. This line producer, again, he's a good friend of mine. He's got probably 2 decades of experience working as a line producer in the industry, so he should be able to really help us figure out the budget for this project, kind of just give us his producer notes, some development notes, what he thinks of the project, and ultimately I'm hoping that maybe I can get him involved as a line producer on the project. But even if that doesn't work out, this is going to be a first real just good meeting to kind of just understand where we're going to have to spend money where we might not necessarily think that we were going to. He just has a lot of experience. There's a lot of driving scenes in there. We already on the phone have started to talk through some of those, making sure that those driving scenes don't feel completely low budget, getting the proper rigs to put the camera on the sides of the cars and that kind of thing. So just a lot of things like that. Those are the sorts of discussions we're going to be having with him. How do we do this? How do we do this type of shooting? And again, he has just so much experience. He'll know, maybe not the exact penny for penny cost of these things, but he'll know roughly what that's going to be. And after reading the script and writing up some notes for us, he'll have a pretty good idea about what he thinks we can do in terms of sort of the minimum budget on this thing. So slowly but surely that project is moving forward, and hopefully I'll have some updates on that in a couple of weeks. So that's the main things that I'm working on. Now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing writer-director Vladimir de Fontenay. Here is the interview. Welcome, Vladimir, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
So I was born in Paris, in France, and I studied political science. I did a lot of different things. I moved to Italy when I was 18. And then one day I was walking by a shop down my house, and they were selling they were selling an old. And my girlfriend's father at the time, he was shooting a lot of Super 8 videos. He was a photographer, and so he gave me some film. And so I started moving images, and it got me interested in sort of like telling stories visually. I had done like a lot of photography when I was younger. My parents gave me a camera when I was 12, and I was shooting a lot of photography. But then suddenly it became something new. I just like the movement, being able to sort of like pan and sort of like express a different feeling by just sort of like creating movement and time. It was like something I thought was very mesmerizing. So I started shooting a lot of homemade little short films, like Friends, and they were horrible. They were terrible short films, obviously, but I had a lot of fun, and I had a lot of fun editing them too. It's like when I discovered editing, I thought it was like so. Just I don't know. It was giving me vertigo because suddenly again like that sense of like affecting time and how like information placed in time was giving you different kinds of emotion was something I thought was incredibly interesting. So I started doing some short films, and then when I was done with my time in Italy, I went back to France and I wanted to get to understand how films were being made, and I didn't know how it worked really. I wanted to understand like what people were doing on sets, like how people were getting their like stories financed or written or produced, and so I did some internships in like production companies. So I would read script, and then I started working as an intern, as a PA on a lot of like film sets in France, and get to observe like the different sort of like roles on a film set. And then I started doing a short film for French TV when I was like maybe 20, and then I applied to. I heard about NYU, which was like a film school that I was dreaming about because they had like people like Todd Solondz or Spike Lee or Jim Jarmusch, like former students that I looked up to, and they were either professors or had been there, and so I applied to NYU, and I saw they had like grants and scholarships, and I went. It was fantastic, and I started doing short film there, and like met like incredible students and professors, and in my second year at NYU, I did a short film called Mobile Homes, and I got to write it there in class, and then like edit it and show it to professors, have their feedback, and I went on the festival circuit with it. And that caught the attention of like a few producers, and then they got they got me money to like write the script for the feature film, and then that's how like I made the feature version of Mobile Homes, which was originally just a student short film.
Yeah, and let's dig into that a little bit. I always like to get a sort of a sense of the scope. How many film festivals did you submit to with this Mobile Homes short?
With the short film. Originally, I sent it to sort of like maybe the top like 10 ones or something, because then like you have to pay for every when you apply to a festival, there's always like a little bit of a fee. So I think I applied to the 10 biggest, I don't know, like festivals, and then I got to South by Southwest, I think, and Clermont-Ferrand, and Clermont-Ferrand was a big deal for like the market for short films, and so I went to both Clermont-Ferrand and I sold the short film there. And after Clermont-Ferrand, that's also how I found the producer. But basically, once I got into Clermont-Ferrand and South by Southwest, then it got invited sort of like to a lot of festivals. Like there's a certain point where after submitting to a few short film festivals, like, and they pick you, then there's programmers that come to these festivals and they want to program them, But it's really funny because, like, for example, in 2 days I'm going to Louisiana in Lafayette for a festival, and they're programmers who had seen the short film at like a festival, like a random festival a long time ago, and then they contacted me and they're like, "Hey, would you be interested in showing the feature?" So it's just like that world is like a very, very supportive and like filled with like very interesting people who are really sort of like helping filmmakers in the long term. You know, like it's insane to think that like I'm going to Louisiana in 2 days to support like a feature with and the people that are allowing me to do it have been people who've been helping me with a short film like years ago.
Yeah. So the one festival is South by Southwest. What's the name of the other festival? You broke up as you were saying that. What's the other festival that you went to?
Oh, Clermont-Ferrand in France.
Oh, okay. I got you. So, okay, perfect. So let's
dig
into
big short film festival.
I see. Okay, so let's dig into your latest feature film, Mobile Homes, starring Imogen Poots. Maybe to start out, you can give us a quick pitch or logline. What is this film all about?
I think this film is about young adults struggling to find a home for themselves, like literally, and then in their sort of like quest or journey to find a home for themselves, they sort of like discover sort of like the true nature of the relationship and what sort of like that home really is for them. It's very abstract log line, but yeah.
I got you. And so let's dig into your. So where did this idea come from? What's sort of the genesis of this idea? Was this a world you knew about in real life, or how did you come up with the idea for this film?
So it worked. So basically, I was in my second year at NYU, and I was scouting for a location, upstate New York, and I was on the highway driving, and at some point there was like a little bit of a wind thing, you know, when like a truck passes you on the highway, and I turned, and it wasn't a truck, it was a home. It was like a mobile house, you know, a mobile home being towed by a truck on the highway, and so basically I just looked at this mesmerizing sort of flying house on the highway, and it was so striking that I thought it was just so cinematic in a way, and it was so evocative of that sort of like feeling of that I think is quite universal of like looking for a home, and you know what is our homes, and like in lives, and like you know how they sort of like change throughout time, and I started that image stick with me for a while. Other than the fact that it was, I thought, very cinematic, I just thought it was very interesting that it was like both evocative of like a certain sense of freedom, but also a certain level of like precarity, like because it's on the, you know, it's like with the wind and the movement, you're like this could collapse, you know. And so I started thinking of characters that had those feelings in them, you know, that feeling of like that desire to like be free, but also just sort of like being in this sort of like very sort of like rough situation that doesn't necessarily allow them to be still in one place and have like a home and a roof over their head.
Yeah. So let's dig into your writing process.
And that's sort of like how it naturally. Yeah. So yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Continue on. No, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. And I started writing these characters, and in a way that like and their relationship to that home, and that's how it worked. And I wrote a short film that was like 13-minute long. That was really just sort of like this situation of a mother and a child sort of like having to run away from an abusive sort of boyfriend and hiding in a mobile home park that like the kid had been exploring before, and they hide in a mobile home. And the next thing they know is the next day after they spend the night there, it's being delivered somewhere, and they're like being towed away with the home somewhere. And that was sort of like the short film. Suddenly they were free in that mobile home, but to go where, we didn't know. And so I did that short film. That was the writing of it. And then after that, I realized, wow, I didn't go far enough with the character. It could be more complex. I feel like I didn't explore the world of the mobile homes enough. And I started thinking, why don't I keep writing about it? Because I was so frustrated about it. And so what was very interesting is I picked up the writing of the feature where I had left the writing of the short. Because the characters existed, the world existed, but then I didn't know what was going to happen to them, because they're basically the short film is kind of like the first act of the feature. And so basically, it was great because it was very intuitive. I was like, okay, what happens to them next? How do they react? Like, what do they do? And, you know, are they able to adjust in the new world that they're like going to enter in? You know, and so that's sort of like how the writing continued. And yeah, and it took me a while to get there. But then again, there's this idea that like when I write, I tend to really free myself from facts or reality at first, so that like I can go really where I want to go in terms of the characters and the movement of the fiction. And then once I have like an idea of a film that works with a script that I think kind of works, you know, as a screenplay, then I confront it to reality. Then I'm like, okay, but what it is, you know, what is that life for these characters? Like, what is it to be a young mother and not having the resources to like find a home and put your kid to school, and what is it to be involved in some like criminal activities like cockfighting, and then I do research and I go and I look at like YouTube videos and I interview people, and, you know, and then the great thing is like research continues up until like the last day that you're like locking your script, because script, but also the film, because like you do the research for the script, but then like when it comes to choosing your location, choosing like the outfit that the actors are like wearing, and like confronted, you know, you look at photographies, you look at like documentaries, you look at things, and then or like how to handle the roosters, or like then and then you come to like color grading at the end of the process, and you're like, wow, but in those photos, remember that we saw of like that like cockfight in like outside of Pennsylvania in that little bar, like it was way darker, so then you turned out. So I think like the research is very important in the writing, but it comes in second. Sort of like at the second half of the writing, and then because it really carries throughout the making of the film till the end, you know?
Yeah. So let's talk about your specific writing process. I noticed on IMDb there is a credit for Daniel Lesovich as an artistic collaborator. What does that actually mean, and what was your relationship with Daniel as you went through this?
Oh, she really helped me write at some point, because I started writing. I wrote this short film, and then I started turning into a feature, and that feature I workshopped in class at NYU. And then she really sort of like helped me, like, you know, sort of like because I was doing some research, and she helped me with the research, and she helped me rewrite stuff. So like she was very much involved in the writing, and it was like very, very nice. And then so I think it turned out that like I think it was for like with some of the production element, like the credits and like it ended up that like she I don't think she could be credited, or with the work she could be credited as a co-writer or something, and that's why we ended up finding other credits. And I think she's also an executive producer and creative artistic collaborator. She really helped me with like, you know, sort of like finding elements of the world and rewriting stuff, and like so yeah, she was very much like creative, and she's making a movie now, but a strong collaborator on the writing of the film.
Yeah, perfect. So as you're going along with this project, it sounded like you got these producers. You had the short film. You got the producers were able to get a little bit of money raised for you to write the script. What sort of stipulations came with writing that money? Did you have some sort of a timeline, like you had to write the script in X number of days? Maybe talk about that process a little bit, and then maybe even get into some of the development process. Obviously, if someone's giving you money, they probably want to give you some input into the creative choices as well. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
No, I was lucky. I was lucky. Two things. I was lucky to have the short that I did before, because with the short, it's like there's already something that exists that's visual, that is like tangible, that everybody can sort of like look at, and so they know what they're getting into. If they you know, like they wanted to produce a feature version of Mobile Homes, there's already a short film called Mobile Homes, so they know the world, the greediness, the images, the look, the kind of acting, the kind of film that they're getting into. So in a way, they were doing the writing, and they were also like really good, like creative producers, and they were like, they let me so much freedom just writing the script. And then I think what happened is after I wrote like a few drafts, one of the producers told me, well, I think you didn't go far enough, or like I think you can push that, and like, but always sort of like very sort of like respectful of my process, but always like sort of, I think, very creatively involved with the script. And then when I wanted to bring Danielle Lesevitz to start like writing with me at some point, like they were like very open to that idea, you know. So they're like, they were just sort of like giving us a lot of freedom, and that's how sort of like how it worked. The thing is, then comes production, and then in production, that's when sort of like the sort of the script is being sort of challenged, because every day you're sort of like you're burning pages of your script, right? They become something else, and so, but that's also very fun, because the script is very much like something that's not gonna last. Like the script is just like something you work with, but then it's meant to disappear and to be turned into images. So then with the budget and the production, then you realize, okay, that giant house is not a giant house anymore because we can't afford it. It's this like tiny basement, and then you shoot in the basement. But then it's sort of like you just have to be testing things and keep sort of your direction, know where you're heading to, and be willing to sort of adjust so that like you sort of like understand the constraints of production. When like, things are not possible, you have to understand that like they're not often like possible anymore. But then it's like, how can you sort of like keep the integrity of the script, but also like it works in the real life. So that's that work that of like juggling with those constraints. That I think is great when you're paired with like producers to understand that like your artistic visions, and also when you're with a creative team that understands that sort of like the producers sort of like constraints and what they're dealing with, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just tend to also, just as a director, I just tend to really enjoy when things are a bit out of control, you know, when things don't really go as planned, you know. I'm the same with like dialogue. When I read dialogue, those dialogues are meant to die. Like I'm always like, I always tell my actors, just say it the way you would keep the idea of the dialogue, but just say it in your own way, you know. And it's the same with blocking. I have an idea of the blocking, but then if the rooster takes me somewhere else, I'll follow the rooster. You know what I mean? So, and I get the whole crew to be in that state of mind of like, the script is really much a tool. What we're looking for here is like a sense of like reality. And something that will entertain all of us. And so it's just sort of like finding it in every scene, in every location, in every set.
Yeah.
So I'm not dogmatic in any way. And it's the same it's the same in the editing. In the editing, I got rid of a lot of things that just simply didn't work, as opposed to sort of like feeling attached to an idea and forcing it into it. It's just like, I love that idea that at some point a film it exists by itself, you know. It's sort of like you have to let go. Like the film becomes its own thing. It has its own rules, and it's just like you can't hold on to a script or an edit. You know, things just sort of like at some point, like the film dictates its own rules somehow.
Yeah, for sure. How can people see Mobile Homes? Do you know what the release schedule is going to be like?
I think in the US, I think the release is on the 16th of November. I think I heard.
Okay. Perfect. And what's the best way for people? So it's going to be released
on the 16th of November, and I think it's going to be on VOD at the end of the year.
Okay, perfect. And what's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? Twitter, Facebook, a blog, anything you're comfortable sharing, I'll round up for the show notes.
Oh, anything. I think I don't think I'm on Twitter, but Facebook. Yeah, you can follow me. Reach out to me on Facebook directly. I'm around and available.
Okay.
And I'm working now on a new film, and
perfect.
Hopefully,
I really appreciate your time. No, I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations on getting this film, and I look forward to following your career and hearing about your next film soon.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
We'll talk to you. You too. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and you can pick the reader who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, character, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We can provide an analysis on features or television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write your logline and synopsis for you. You can add this logline and synopsis writing service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your screenplay gets a recommend or a consider from one of our readers, you get to list the screenplay in the SYS Select database, which is a database for producers to find screenplays and a big part of our SYS Select program. Producers are in the database searching for material on a daily basis, so it's another great way to get your material in front of them. As a further bonus, if your script gets a recommend from one of our readers, your screenplay will get included in our monthly Best Of newsletter. Each month we send out a newsletter that highlights the best screenplays that have come through our script analysis service. This is a monthly newsletter that goes out to our list of over 400 producers who are actively looking for material. So again, this is another great way to get your material out there. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Kane Sense and Hannah Barlow, who just wrote and directed a small indie dramedy called For Now. Kane was actually on the podcast a few years ago. I think it was episode number 76. I will grab that and put it in the show notes. If you have a minute, I would say listen to that before next week's episode. I'm not going to go through, or I try at least not to go through, a lot of the same information. So I'm not going to have Kane come on and kind of talk about his background. That's all on episode 76. In this case, he did this movie with Hannah, so it's Kane and Hannah. So we'll get into Hannah's backstory a little bit, but definitely check out that episode 76 for a little bit of backstory on Kane. And then this is just another great example. Kane and Hannah, they're just two people trying to make it in this business. They just went out and they just made their film. It's a great sort of just, again, inspiring story from two artists just getting out there and trying to make things happen for themselves. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. That's the show. Thank you for listening.